Good morning. Today is the 28th day of Nisan, and it's also the 19th of April. And we're going to be looking at the fourth reading of Parshat Tazria-Metzora together. And today's reading starts with what we call the process of the ritual purification of the person who had Tzara'at, who had leprosy. And I'm sure that everyone knows that the illness that the Torah calls Tzara'at is agreed upon by most people, is not what is known as leprosy. That is an illness that is actually contagious, and you can get it from one person to another. The Torah is talking about something that is entirely a spiritual source, and this will tie in very strongly to what we're going to see today. So, in chapter 14, verse 1, we read as follows: God spoke to Moses, saying, "This shall be the ritual for a leper at the time of being purified, when it has been reported to the priest." So here they translated reported, but very, very strange translation. The translation really is when he is brought to the priest, not just reported to the priest. He's brought to the priest because the whole process was such that the diagnosis that this is this spiritual type of illness was made by the priest. It was a 2-week process, at least a 2-week process, usually a 2-week process at least. And the priest was the one who decided that this is what he has. But also to purify him, he had to see the priest again. The problem was that when a person was diagnosed as having this illness called Tzara'at, leprosy, they were sent away from society. They couldn't live in their home. They couldn't live with other people. It was a time of, if one wants, it's almost like an exile. And they had to be outside of the realm of everyone else. In the desert, in the wilderness, in the encampment, they were sent out of all the camps, and they lived on the outskirts. There's many later testimonies to this, that this was practiced later. There's a very famous story of lepers that were the first ones to see that the Assyrians had fled from Jerusalem. There's all kinds of stories about these lepers that were outside the walls, that weren't inside regular society. So the problem now is that it says that when he comes to be purified, meaning that he's healed from this illness, then he should be brought to the priest. But that's entirely impossible because the priest is sitting inside the encampment. He's sitting inside the city. So he can't be brought. So this is a very strange phrase that the Torah uses. Again, the ritual is, on the day that he will be purified, he shall be brought to the priest. In any case, the next verse says, the priest shall go outside the camp. If the priest sees that the leper has been healed of the scaly affection and so on, then he does so and so. So what do we see? That we see exactly that the Torah knows this. Of course he can't come to the priest. The priest has to come out. So the question becomes, why does the Torah even say he should be brought before the priest? So this is a question that's been asked by many commentaries. And what we're going to look at today is a very important concept spiritually that is not usually discussed so much. In fact, the way we started looking at Tazria, at the first parsha this week, was that there is this concept of the lower coming up to the higher and the higher coming down to the lower. We talked about this in different ways. Basically, the usual notion in spirituality is that either I'm aroused from below to elevate, to go up, or whatever is on top, be it God or something else that's spiritual, or the teacher, is aroused from above to come down to me. So those are the two usual ways in which we look at spirituality. But there is a middle way. In fact, in one of his works, the Alter Rebbe discusses this middle way, and he says that this is actually the way of God. And he attributes the lower going up and the higher coming down, and he attributes this to the angels. That it's an angelic way of thinking, which is black and white. It's either I go up or you come down. So two people are standing, one is at the top of the mountain, one's at the bottom. There's only two options. Either you come up to me, like Moses went up to God, he climbed the mountain, or I'll come down to you. But in truth, it wasn't that simple, because Moses went up to the mountain, but at the same time, God had come down. So says there the Alter Rebbe that really there's a middle path in the middle, and this was what we saw in the book of Exodus when Moses set out to Egypt. He was afraid that if he took the job of being God's messenger who would take the Jewish people out of Egypt, his brother Aaron would be upset with him because he was the leader of the generation. Aaron was the leader in Egypt. And so God promised him, look, you'll go towards Aaron and you'll see that Aaron will go out towards you. So that's a very big principle between people and people that are godly. That you always have to think about it in the sense of that I come halfway and you come halfway. So that's one possible explanation of why the Torah here says, V'uvai l'kohen, he shall come to the priest, and the priest shall also go out to him. Because the Torah here again is using this principle of meeting halfway. The question is, why? What is at the basis of this? And so for this we need, what really makes it possible that they can meet halfway? So this is a very important principle that needs to be learned in terms of human relations and in many other areas. The Kli Yakar, who is one of the commentaries on the Chumash, and he was one of the, I believe, one of the original commentaries that was based on Rashi. Actually, I think even a student in some way of the Maharal, who in the Maharals in Prague, they had a very strong tradition of commenting on Rashi himself, and the Kli Yakar was one of them. He writes something very interesting. He says that, and again, this is a very basic principle. He says, because Tzara'at is not an illness like other illnesses, it just stresses, it highlights what happens in every other illness. He says, really, there's a two-stage process here. What is this two-stage process? That first of all, the person has to do tshuva. Before he can come and be healed, before the healing actually takes place, he first of all has to take to heart, why am I ill in the first place? The whole illness was not to punish him. The whole illness is in order to awaken him to something. So his heart awakens, he says. His heart awakens to change his ways. That's why he's cast out. He's sent out of all the encampments, telling him, look, whatever you're doing, it doesn't fit what society can deal with. Something is wrong with what you're doing. So you have to fix this. The moment, says the Kli Yakar, the moment that the person has already done tshuva in his heart, it's as if he's already brought to the priest. The priest is the one who told him that he's sick in the first place. Whenever he takes these words to heart and he changes himself, it's considered, says the Kli Yakar, as if he's been brought to the priest. It's as if he's come out towards the priest, even though he can't go anywhere. The priest then automatically says, because you were brought to him in your heart, because you decided in your heart to connect, then he's drawn to you almost by coercion. He almost can't help himself. He wants to come back to you to finish the healing process, to declare that you've been purified. So the same thing happened between Moses and Aaron. Because Moses was so concerned about how Aaron would feel, God says to him, look, you just go halfway, you'll see that because you're concerned for your brother, when you have this true concern, he'll meet you, he'll go out towards you, even though he doesn't know that you're coming. He'll be drawn to you. We all know the famous story. I think everybody knows the story that's in the Medrash, that there were two brothers. One had a large family, and the other was not married and had no children. And they were very prosperous in their fields, and the one year they had a tremendous amount of produce. And when they had finished harvesting everything and bringing it into their silos, they went to sleep very content. But neither of them could fall asleep. The brother who had many children, let's start with the other one. The one who had no children thought, my brother has a wife and many children to feed. It's not fair that I give him only half. He should take much more than half. And so he loaded his wagon with a large amount of the produce that he had, and he made his way out to meet his brother. The other brother couldn't sleep at night, and he said, I already have a family. I have God has given me everything. I have all the pleasures of life. I have all the things that a man needs. My brother is not married yet. He doesn't know where his life is going. On the contrary, he should get much more than I do. He can at least invest it in something and have some feeling that he's doing something in the world. And so he loaded up his wagon and set out to meet his brother. And of course they met halfway, and the Medrash says that where they met halfway was where the temple was built. This idea that where we come out, you come out towards the priest, and therefore he feels drawn to you. Where we come out to God, we want to go up the mountain to reach the temple. God sees this and he comes down, just like it was at Mount Sinai. That the coming up, that the real yearning to change, the real yearning to meet the other person causes them and pulls them towards us. And that says the Kliyakar is why it says first, and he will be brought to the priest, even though he's never brought to the priest, but in his heart he is. And therefore the priest, V'yatsa Kohen, immediately the priest will go out to meet him.